Hi, biology students. Today we are going to talk about photosynthesis together. So, as an overview of photosynthesis, all organisms need a constant supply of energy to survive. The definition of organism is any living thing. And you remember we had an assignment, the characteristics of living things, and one of those characteristics was they obtain and use energy. That means they eat or they have food of some kind. So all organisms need energy. They must obtain and use energy. For most life on Earth, the ultimate source of energy is the sun. You either get your energy from the sun directly if you are a plant, or if you are not a plant, you get your energy from the sun by eating plants or by eating animals that ate plants. All energy on the earth for living things, for almost every living thing, had its origin of energy in the sun. So converting that energy source, that light energy source, into something usable as food is accomplished by photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, here's our definition. The overall process by which sunlight, which is solar or light energy, water, and carbon dioxide are chemically converted from light energy into chemical energy stored in glucose. Glucose is a sugar, a carbohydrate, and it is the primary source of food, energy for humans. So photosynthesis can be represented by the following chemical equation. 6 carbon dioxide, CO2 is carbon dioxide, molecules, plus 6 water molecules. We add some solar energy, and we get out glucose. C6H12O6 is glucose, plus 6 oxygen molecules as a waste product. So here we have a diagram of this. Carbon dioxide is going into the leaf from the air, water is going into the plant from the roots, and we have solar energy here. And then the sugar is going to stay, the glucose is going to stay in the plant, and it will be accessible to animals that eat the plant. And then the oxygen is going to go out of the leaves as a waste product. So here we have again 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 water equals a glucose plus 6 oxygen. The reactants, the ingredients in this chemical equation, are carbon dioxide and water. The products or the results of this chemical reaction are glucose and oxygen. Photosynthesis can be divided into 2 sets of reactions. The light-dependent reaction, this is the photo part of photosynthesis. Photo means light, and so for this part of the reaction, we need the light from the sun. This requires solar energy. The light-independent reaction, sometimes called the dark reaction, this is the synthesis part of photosynthesis. Synthesis means to create. What are we creating? We are creating glucose. And this does not require any solar energy. So 2 sets of reactions, light dependent or photo, and light independent or synthesis, okay? Photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast. Only plants have a chloroplast. You and I don't have a chloroplast. So for the purposes of this class, it is sufficient to me that you understand that photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast. But when you all move on to college and you take your college level biology class, which everyone needs to do, you're going to get a little more detail. So I'm going to give you more detail now so that college isn't the first time you see it. So these individual stacks of green pancakes are called thylakoid membrane. Each one is one thylakoid membrane. And when you stack them up together, we call it the grana. And then all surrounding the grana, the stacks of thylakoid membranes called the grana, is the stroma, the fluid in the chloroplast. This is what a little chloroplast organelle inside of a plant cell looks like. But for us, you just need to know that photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast. So let's talk about the light-dependent reaction first. The purpose of this is to capture the energy from the sun and store the energy into energy-carrying molecules, ATP and NADPH. When we were learning about the organelles of cells, we talked about ATP. We said that the language our cells speak is protein, and the currency our bodies and our cells spend is ATP. If our cells had money to spend, that money would be ATP. There are also other forms of currency. ATP is the main one, but NADPH is another, and we will learn about a couple of others. ATP is the main one for you to remember. The location where this light-dependent reaction happens is in the chloroplast. That's all you need to know, but to give you a little more detail so you can see it before you go to college, this occurs in the grana, specifically the thylakoid membrane where the chlorophyll is stored. Chlorophyll is the pigment that captures sunlight. Chlorophyll is what makes plants green. And in the autumn, when the leaves stop being green, it's because the chlorophyll has stopped being produced, and we see the color that was there all along that the chlorophyll was covering. So in this light-dependent reaction, energy from the sun is passed down the electron transport chain, and it's stored in the bonds of the ATP molecules and the NADPH molecules. That's where the energy gets stored. Water molecules are split into separate hydrogen and oxygen atoms. Oxygen is released as a waste product, and we are very grateful to all the plants that they are releasing oxygen for us. ATP, NADPH, and hydrogen leave the grana and go into the stroma for the next stage. So here's what's happening at the organism level, but what's happening, this light-dependent reaction isn't happening at the organism level. It's at the cell level. So let's see what we've got here. We've got energy from the sun, this light here, and it's going to be passed down an electron transport chain and is stored in the bonds of the ATP and the NADPH. Water molecules, we've got them right here, are split into oxygen atoms and hydrogen atoms. So here we've got our oxygen atoms out. And ATP, NADPH, and hydrogen are all leaving to come over here to our next step. So this is the light-independent reaction, or the synthesis, where we create, synthesis means create, where we create the glucose. The purpose of the light-independent reaction is to use the energy from the energy-carrying molecules we just charged up with the energy from the sun to make sugar or glucose. So the location for this class, you just need to know it happens in the chloroplast. But to give you a little more detail, this occurs in the stroma, the liquid between the stacks of grana. And this process is called the Calvin cycle. So chemical reactions powered by ATP and NADPH combine hydrogen atoms, which were stripped off from the water molecules, with carbon dioxide to form sugar molecules. So you remember we had carbon dioxide, which is carbon atoms and oxygen atoms. And then we broke apart the water, which had hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms, and the oxygen atoms were sent away from the plant. They were exhaled as waste. But we have all of the things that we need to create glucose when we rearrange them. This uses carbon dioxide and hydrogen from water, and it makes our glucose. So here in the Calvin cycle, we're combining all of the ingredients from the last step, and we have our carbon dioxide coming in, we have our hydrogen over here, and we end up with sugar. And it just stays in the plant to be consumed by an animal, by us. And then when we've taken everything we need from the ingredients we made in the first reaction here that required light, we end up with these high energy electron carriers, which can then be charged up again. So it's a cycle that goes around and around and around. These can be charged up by light, and then they can go here and go back into the Calvin cycle, and then they can come back and be charged up by light and go back into the Calvin cycle, so that a plant that has water and carbon dioxide and sunlight can make as long as it's alive, an endless supply of its own food. And that is photosynthesis.